In this video, I'll be sharing with you a requested tutorial on how to cut this corset shirt. This dress is from Ashley White Couture on TikTok. If you haven't yet subscribed, please kindly hit on the subscribe button. Let's dive right into today's video. So first, here is my pattern. And in front of my pattern, you notice that I have like 1.5 inches in front. That will be serving as my button allowance for this dress. And this button allowance should be on fold. So after this, I marked my shoulder to bust, under bust, waist and blouse length. So when you cut out this button allowance of 1.5, when you're replacing it back to your pattern, it should be on fold and you're going to add extra half inch, making it 2 inches for joining allowance back to your pattern. So after this, we'll move over to cutting or marking our shoulder measurement divided by 2 and I'll add half. Now I'm going to come down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope, mark my basic neckline of 3 inches and come down by 3 inches also. I'll go ahead to place my curve drew and I'm going to connect at this point. So after that, I'll place back my ruler and I'm going to connect down to my shoulder slope. After I'm done connecting to my shoulder slope, the next step is to find your chest line. To find your chest line is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. What I have is 7 inches. I'll take the measurement I have there, replace it here. So after marking that, I'm going to go ahead to place my ruler and I'm going to draw out a straight line at this point. So after marking that, I'm going to go ahead to measure what I have on the shoulder, on the chest line or the armhole line. Now I'm going to place my ruler and I'm going to draw this or connect this back. Now I'm going to place my tape and I'm going to divide the armhole into 2. Come out by half inch. So from here, I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4. Any measurement I'm taking is starting after the button allowance. Now I'm going to place connect from here all the way to the half inch at the armhole and I'll connect it back to the chest line area. So there are several ways of drafting this out. You can just take your ready-made cup, place and draw out your cup area. That is if you're using a dartless method. Now we are going to use the method where we are going to draft out our cup. Now I started by marking out my nipple to nipple divided by 2. My nipple to nipple is 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5 inches. So after marking that is marking your nipple to nipple from the bust, under bust, waist and blouse length. I'll place my ruler to draw out a straight line. Next, I'll be marking my dart intake of 1 inch on both sides. So if you're a plus size, you'll be using 1.5 inches on both sides of your dart. Place your ruler and I'm going to connect this all the way to the upper part of my under bust, and I will also repeat this same process at the other side of my pattern. Now after I'm done marking, I'm going to go ahead to connect from the bust area down to the under bust, and I'm also going to repeat this at the other side of my pattern, connecting from the under bust to the bust. Now I'll go in with my marker and I'll outline this. Now you want to determine where the cup on your corset will start. Now I want to use 1.5 inches and I'll draw out. So go ahead to take your measurement or you can use 2 inches for yours. So unless you're too busty, you can consider using more. So after that, I'll mark back my nipple to nipple, place my ruler and draw out a straight line. Now, the next step is to mark your dart. For my dart, to avoid much caping on this pattern, I'm using 0.75 on both sides. So now, let's say you're a plus size, you can go ahead to use at least 1.25 here or 1.5 because we don't want to take out much dart on this pattern because this is more like a corset cup, a corset but in a shirt form. So after I'm done marking this, the next step I'm going to take is to go ahead to insert my measurements. I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace, and I'll add my sewing allowance. This is a shirt pattern and you don't want to use too much allowance. 1 inch is okay, or you can use 1.5. I'll mark my under bust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace, and then I'll add my sewing allowance. Here I'll also repeat this and mark my waist measurement. And remember, all this measurement is starting after our button allowance. My under bust and waist is the same measurement. I'll go ahead to mark that. Here I'll mark my hip circumference divided by 4, replace my dart intake and add the sewing allowance. For your shirt length, you can use any length of your choice or go ahead to come down by 5 inches after your waistline. So now I'm just going to go ahead to connect this all the way to the lower part of my pattern. So after I'm done marking this, right, the next step we're going to take is to go ahead to draw out our cup. I'm going to go ahead to come down by ½ inch from my chest line, go in by ½ inch, and I'm going to go ahead to place my ruler and draw out this line. Now I'm going to go ahead to place my cup this way, my curved ruler, and connect for my cup. So next, I'll just use my marker to outline this, and I'll be drawing out the cup area. So I'll just use my free hand to get exactly the cup I want at that point. Now I'll mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2 and add ½ inch. So if you're plus size, you should consider adding 1 inch after your nipple to nipple, or if you're a bit busty, add 1 inch to that point, and I'll go ahead to connect. So I'll just go ahead to cut this out and I'll outline this part of my pattern. So this is the button allowance. Remember, this is 1.5 inches. When you're cutting it, you're going to cut it on fold because you're going to reattach this part. That is the button allowance. You're going to cut it out and you're going to reattach it to the main pattern of the dress. And you're also going to add additional ½ inch, which will serve for or serve as joining allowance. Now I'll just go ahead to come down by 1.5 inches, which is my bust dart. To get your bust dart is the difference between your shoulder to waist in front and your shoulder to waist at the back. My shoulder to waist in front is 17.5. My shoulder to waist at the back is 15.5. So if you take out 15.5 from 17 inches, you have 1.5. So that is how I got my bust dart. And from here, I'll just try to draw out the asymmetric hemline slight shape that we have there. Now I'll just go ahead to cut this out after I'm done marking. Now what we have here is actually a 3-part corset, which I'm also going to turn my 2-part corset into a 3-part corset after or while I'm cutting this, because I have to blend out my dart. So now take the round measurement of the neckline you have here plus the extra 1.5 inches, which will serve as the button allowance. So in total, what I have for the neckline of the dress is roughly 6.5 inches. Now I'll just go ahead to cut out my pattern. So at this point, if you have any question, please go ahead to leave your question at the comment section. And if you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, please go ahead to hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, leave your comments at the comment section. So now I'll just continue cutting out my pattern, but before doing that, I'll have to blend out my dart and tape it up. Now we are also going to reconnect our cup to make it a 3-part corset just like we have, and I'll go ahead to label my cup, and after that I'll go ahead to record this part. So when you're placing back the button allowance, you're going to add ½ inch for joining allowance, making it a total of 2 inches, and then you cut it on fold, which will give you 4 inches for your pattern. Now I'll just cut out my 3-part corset and cut out the remaining dart of this dress, so you can blend this out as one piece for the lower part. Now moving over to the back pattern, I've gone ahead to mark out my basic measurement just like we did for the front. The only difference is that we don't have a zipper allowance at the front, and also at the back my shoulder to waist is 15 inches and then 5 inches for my blouse length. Now I'll go ahead to insert my measurement for the back, which is my bust circumference divided by 4 and my sewing allowance, my waist circumference divided by 4, add my sewing allowance. and then at the blouse length I'll add my hip circumference divided by 4 and add my sewing allowance. Now for the neckline of the back, I use 3 by 1 inch for that point. Now I'll also draw out the asymmetric hemline we have at the front part, and I'll go ahead to outline my pattern. Now for this pattern you don't need so much sewing allowance, just like I mentioned earlier. It's more like a corset shirt, so I'll go in by ½ inch here because I want this pattern to sit very well at the back, because we are not using a lacing for this pattern. Now why I'm doing this is to make sure that the back is well relaxed, so whatever I take here I'll replace it here. Now I'm just going to go ahead to connect this and take it all the way to the other side. That is replacing what I took out at the center. So that means for this shirt, the back pattern is going to have a joining at the center of the shirt. So now take the measurement you have round here. We're going to use it to cut out our shirt. So what we have here now is roughly 3.5 inches. And remember, what we have at the front is 6.5. So this 3.5 plus 6.5 will be adding it up together to cut the collar of this dress. So after cutting this, we'll move over to cutting the collar of the shirt. So you cut out 2 pieces of the back pattern. So to cut out the collar of this shirt, you're going to transfer the measurements, round measurement of the neckline, which is 6.5 plus 3.5 will give you 10 inches. I just cut out the remaining required pattern paper I need. So I'll place my tape and mark the midpoint of my collar, or the middle of my collar, which is 5 inches. So at the back, I'll go up by 1 inch and connect it to that midpoint, or you can go up by ½ inch and connect it. So here I'll mark my collar stand and I'll be using 1.5 inches. So sorry, when I was marking this part it was not really showing, so I had to go ahead to use my marker to outline it. So that's 1.5 inches you marked. After, you're going to place your ruler and you're going to connect. So I'll just go ahead and I'll connect this. After I'm done connecting this, the next step is now to mark out the collar area of this. Now I'm going to come in by 1 inch and go up by 3 inches here. So after marking the 3 inches, I'm going to go ahead. Okay, I marked 2 inches. Now I extended it to 3 inches and marked 2 inches at the other side. Now I'm going to connect this back to the 3 inches at the front part of my pattern. So sorry, this part is not really clear. I did not notice when I was cutting this out. Now I'll blend out the front of my collar stand and I'll go ahead to cut this out. So this is the collar of the dress, and the other side will be serving as the collar stand of this dress. Now you can go ahead to cut this on fold and use it to cut out your collar.